In this video, you're going to convert the website you built earlier using HTML5 and CSS3 to a fully responsive website. And you're going to do that using Flexbox. So if you go to the old layouts and reduce the width of the browser, then you will see that that website is not responsive at the moment. So the final website is going to be fully responsive and it's going to adapt to any screen size. So if I reduce the width of the container or the browser, then I can see that the top section of the website is going to respond at some point by wrapping the search box into a new line like this. And you can also see that the content of the Flexbox is centered horizontally and vertically inside the box. Also, if you look at the menu, at some point, when the screen becomes too small, it's going to change its direction to a vertical direction and it's going to lose all these borders between menu items. And if I scroll down and look at the sidebars, I can still see a space between the sidebars, and if I reduce the width, then at some point the sidebars are going to be stacked one on top of the other. So let's go ahead and make these changes using Flexbox. So if you want, you can download the starting source code from the resources attached to this lecture. And then we'll be making changes to that source code. So first of all, I'm going to go to the body element and make sure that there is no margin and no padding there. So any default margin or padding is going to be removed. Also, I'm going to make sure that any elements inside the web page are sized by including their padding and any margins. So I'm going to select everything using the star, and then I'm going to set the box sizing to border box. All right. Now let's move to the container, which is the element wrapping all our content, starting from the header and going to the footer. So instead of setting the width to a specific number like this, I'm going to do that relative to the width of the browser to make it responsive. So for example, I'm going to go for 90%. And now you can see that if I reduce the width of the browser, then the width of the container responds to that change. Now you can see that some elements have broken already, which is fine because we're going to come back to them later and fix them. So the next step is to see how we are going to reach this state where the top section of the website responds to the width changes by wrapping the search box into a new line like this. So you can do that easily by making this box a flex box and making elements inside its flex items, and then you can control how you wrap them using properties that you already know using Flexbox. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go to the header element or the div of class header, and I'm going to convert it to a flexbox. So let's give it a display property, which I'm going to set to flex. And also, since we want the flex items to be wrapped into new lines, I'm going to set the flex wrap property to wrap. Then I'm going to go to the flex items and distribute the width equally between them. As you can see in the final layouts, the width of the brand and the search the search box are actually the same. And they occupy half the width of the row until we wrap the second flex item into a new line. Then they occupy the full width because they are alone inside their row. So let's select the brand first. So instead of using float left, we're going to set the flex property to 50%. And then let's go to the search box. And instead of using float right, we're going to set the flex property to 50%. Now, instead of 50%, you can also use 1 and 1. That's absolutely fine. So let's have a look at our layout. So this looks better. Now, let's go to the search box and start making changes so that it matches the final design. So we want to make sure the components inside this box are centered horizontally and vertically inside the box. So an easy way to do this is by making the box a flex box and then centering these items using flexbox properties. So let's set its display property to flex. And then let's center the elements horizontally using justify content set to center, and then vertically by using align items, which I'm going to set to center as well. All right. At the moment, it's not very clear because the height of this box is too small. So if I change that to 100, then it looks better. But let's do something even better and remove the height property and just make sure the padding is there. So instead of setting the padding like this, I'm just going to set it to 20 pixels so that we set the padding from all sides to 20 pixels. Now let's look at the final layout and see how it looks like. So let's see why our box is actually a little bit down compared to the final layout. So it looks like we've got some margin there. So let's see if we've got a margin property. And here we go. We've got a margin top. So if I remove that, this will look better. But it still looks tight. So let's have a look at the height of this top section and see if we've got that set to any specific value. And here we go. We've got that set to 100 pixels. So if we just remove that, then that looks better. And our elements are now not overlapping with the menu items. And this is perfect. So let's test our layout and make sure that it does work. Well, we don't see the search box being wrapped into a new row. And that's because we didn't set any minimum width for this element. So let's go ahead and find out how to do that. So we set its width to 400 pixels. And we also set its flex property to 1. Now there is a problem with this because the width property and the flex property are not compatible. So we shouldn't be using both the flex property and the width property. But we can use the flex property combined with the minimum width property. So I'm going to set the minimum width of the search box to 400 pixels instead. Now you can see that the search box cannot go below 400 pixels. But instead, it's going to get wrapped into a new line. Now, if you look at the final layout, you'll see that the brand doesn't shrink that much as in our current layout. Well, actually, it just shrinks to that point, and then the items are wrapped into a new row. So to do this, you can set the brand's minimum width to a certain value, just like you did with the search box, to make sure the width of the brand doesn't go below that value when you reduce the width of the container. So let's try this and see how it goes. So I'm going to go for a minimum width of 400 pixels, for example. And let's see how it goes. So if I reduce the width of the container, you can see that the brand's width doesn't go below 400 pixels. Now there is another solution. Instead of setting the flex property to a unitless value, which means that you're setting the flex grow property to that value and you're setting the flex basis to 0, you can set the flex basis instead by giving the flex property a value with a unit or a percentage. So if I set flex to something like 50% for both the brand and the flex box, this means that I'm setting the flex basis of these two elements to 50% of the width of the row. So this means that both elements start at a flex basis of 50%, and that's the starting point, by the way. You would know that by going to the point where elements get wrapped into a new row. That's your flex basis. So we start at 50%, then elements grow at the same rate. Now, just a quick reminder, when you set the flex property to a unique value like this, it's going to be either the flex grow or the flex basis. If you give it a unit or a percentage, it's going to be the flex basis as in this scenario. If you don't give it any units and you just use a unitless value, then that's going to be the flex grow, and the flex basis is going to be set to 0. All right, so now we are ready to move to the next section, which is the menu section. And you're going to build a fully responsive menu using Flexbox. And that's what you're going to do in the next video.